It was 2 weeks before the biggest premiere in music video history. Michael Jackson picked up the phone and called his attorney, John Branca. His voice was urgent. Panicked, he had one instruction: destroy the negatives. Everything. The footage, the zombie sequences, the transformation, the 6 weeks of filming. Gone. His religion had seen what he'd made, and they told him it was evil. This is the story of how the most famous music video ever created almost never existed, and the chain of accidents, dreams, and desperate decisions that made it happen anyway. By the fall of 1983, the Thriller album had already been out for almost a year. It had produced hit after hit. Billie Jean, Beat It, Wanna Be Startin' Something. The world knew Michael Jackson was something different, something historic. But album sales had slowed. The initial surge was flattening. Manager Frank DeLeo sat down with Michael and made a proposal. One more push, one more single. But this time, not just a song, a film. The title track hadn't even been released as a single yet in America. If they were going to do this, they had to do it right. What happened next would cost $500,000, nearly destroy Michael's faith, and permanently change what music videos could be. Here's what almost nobody knows. Michael Jackson didn't write Thriller. Not a single word of it. The man who wrote it was named Rod Temperton. He was from Cleethorpes, a small seaside town in the north of England. Before he broke into music, he worked in the office of a frozen fish factory in Grimsby. That's where Rod Temperton spent his mornings, filing paperwork, counting inventory, dreaming about songs. He eventually joined a funk band called Heatwave, writing their biggest hits. Producer Quincy Jones heard him and brought him to Los Angeles to write for Michael Jackson. Temperton wrote 3 songs on the Off the Wall album, then 3 more on Thriller. He never sought fame, never gave interviews. The music industry called him the Invisible Man. He died in 2016, and most people who've heard Thriller 1,000 times still don't know his name. When Rod Temperton sat down to write the title track, he had no title. He filled pages with options, hundreds of words, hundreds of combinations. None of them right. The song went through 2 working titles. First Starlight, then Midnight Man. Quincy Jones liked the direction, but nothing clicked. Then one morning, Temperton woke up in his hotel room with a single word in his head: Thriller. He later said, "You could visualize it at the top of the Billboard charts. You could see the merchandising for this one word, how it jumped off the page." He threw out every other option. Just that one word from a dream in the middle of the night. That word would become the title of the best-selling album in the history of recorded music. Now someone had to say it out loud in a way that made your skin crawl. Rod Temperton wrote the spoken word section for a voice he had in mind from the beginning: Vincent Price, the master of horror. The man whose laugh alone had frightened audiences for 40 years. On the day of the recording session, Temperton was still writing Price's lines in a taxi on the way to the studio. He handed Price the script when he arrived. Price had seen it for perhaps 20 minutes. He walked into the booth, put on the headphones, and delivered one of the most iconic performances in pop music history. in just 2 or 3 takes. Then came the business side. Price was offered a choice, $20,000 flat or a percentage of album royalties. He took the cash. Thriller sold over 70 million copies. That choice cost him more money than most people earn in a lifetime. Michael Jackson had a vision for the video. He didn't want a performance clip. He wanted a monster movie. He'd seen John Landis's film An American Werewolf in London, a 1981 horror comedy with a transformation sequence so realistic it won the first ever Academy Award for Best Makeup. Michael watched that scene and made a decision. He wanted that director, and he wanted that makeup artist. He called Landis directly. Landis said yes. What Michael didn't know, or perhaps didn't care about, was that Landis was, at that moment, facing criminal charges. A year earlier, on the set of Twilight Zone the movie, a helicopter had crashed during filming. 3 people were killed, including 2 children. Landis was the director in charge. The manslaughter trial would last 4 years. He was directing Thriller while his own future hung in the balance. Filming began in the fall of 1983 in downtown Los Angeles. The budget was $500,000, 5 to 10 times the cost of an average music video at the time. Nobody had ever spent that kind of money on a music video. The industry thought it was insane. They built a cemetery. They built a movie theater. They hired 45 dancers and dressed them as zombies. Rick Baker, the same makeup artist from An American Werewolf in London, designed every transformation. Michael Jackson spent hours in the makeup chair to become a werecat, then a zombie. The crew worked nights. Downtown Los Angeles streets were closed. Residents called the police thinking something had gone wrong. Nothing had gone wrong. This was exactly what Michael Jackson had planned. The zombie choreography that the world would imitate for the next 40 years was not created by Michael Jackson alone. Michael Peters was a choreographer from Brooklyn. He had already worked with Michael on Beat It, where he taught real gang members from the streets of Skid Row to dance for the video. Now he was designing the movements for Thriller's Undead Ensemble. The shoulder roll, the stiff-armed lurch, the synchronized collapse and rise. Peters built it all and then performed it himself. He's one of the zombies in the video. Peters won 2 major awards in 1984, one for Beat It, one for Thriller. He was one of the most gifted choreographers of his generation. He died in 1994 at the age of 39. His name is rarely mentioned when people talk about Thriller. It should be. The video was finished. The premiere was 2 weeks away. And then Michael Jackson's faith caught up with him. The elders of his congregation had seen the footage. They were clear. This video depicted the occult, demons, the undead. A Christian, a Jehovah's Witness, had no business putting his name on it. Michael called John Branca. Destroy the negatives. Branca talked him back from the edge. He reminded Michael what was at stake. For the music, for the people who had worked 6 weeks to make this, Branca locked the negatives in his office to protect them. But Michael needed a compromise, something that would let him release the video without abandoning his beliefs. They settled on a disclaimer. 7 words at the very beginning, before the first frame of monsters appeared. The words appeared on screen before anything else. Due to my strong personal convictions, I wish to stress that this film in no way endorses a belief in the occult. Michael Jackson also published a statement in the official Jehovah's Witness magazine, Awake, publicly denouncing his own video. He told the world, "I would never do anything like that again." 4 years later, he quietly left the Jehovah's Witnesses entirely. The disclaimer is still there today. Every time Thriller plays, on YouTube, on television, at Halloween parties around the world, those words appear first. A private crisis, preserved in public, forever attached to the most famous music video ever made. On December 2nd, 1983, Thriller premiered on MTV. Not in October. Not at Halloween. In December, when the album had already been on shelves for over a year and sales were slowing, the effect was immediate and staggering. In the 2 weeks after the premiere, worldwide album sales jumped from roughly 14 million copies to 20 million. By February 1984, it had reached 25 million. The video hadn't just promoted the album, it had restarted it, turned a slowing phenomenon back into a tsunami. MTV, which had resisted playing black artists for most of its existence, now couldn't play Thriller enough. The channel that had needed to be threatened with a full label boycott just to air Billie Jean was now built on the audience that Thriller brought in. In 2009, the Library of Congress inducted the Thriller music video into the National Film Registry, the first music video in history to receive that honor. Films selected for the registry are deemed culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant to American life. In 2024, the video crossed 1 billion views on YouTube. 40 years after it was filmed on the streets of downtown Los Angeles, Rod Temperton, who dreamed the title and never sought the spotlight, died quietly in London in 2016. Michael Peters, who choreographed those movements that every child at every Halloween party has attempted, died at 39 and is barely remembered. And somewhere on every copy of Thriller ever released, before the monsters appear, 7 words still sit at the top of the screen. The words of a man who almost burned it all down.